Right then, there's only one place we can start. It's Aston Villa 3, Paris Saint-Germain 2. Then the Parisians go through 5-4 on aggregate. Oh, Jim, it was an incredible night at Villa Park, but the villains were so near and yet so far.
Yeah, so near. And I think when you look back on the game, the thing that illustrates quite how near they were was how many really top-class saves Gianluigi Donnarumma had to make. He dug them out a couple of times there. Mm-hmm. And every time Villa went forward, after they got their second goal, they looked like they were going to score. And they managed to keep that up for a long, long time. It was only really like last 5 minutes or so that PSG managed to get back in the game really and start to control it again. And it was so impressive, I think, from Villa because we've not really seen PSG rattle like that since the kind of early stages of the group stages.
Luis Enrique said that himself. We haven't been dominated like that by another side, although he did say they needed it and they were pushing forward and taking risks. So it's, it's within that context.
It's contextual, isn't it? Yeah, It is contextual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gutted for Villa, but I think they'll look at a performance like that and think we belong in this stage. If we can beat a team like that, we belong in this stage of the Champions League, and I think that will give them a boost in the run-in in qualifying again.
Are you gutted more that the fact that they didn't go through because you hope Arsenal would play them in the next round?
No, because Arsenal always lose to English opposition in Europe, so I'm delighted to not play Villa. I'd rather play Real Madrid again than play Villa.
I think bringing in another team, a good team from your own domestic league, puts a whole other dimension on it in the Champions League. So that's
well, anyway, it can't happen now.
It's academic, isn't it?
But what a night it was, though, Luke. Yeah. Even though they go out, it's a night where you can use that as a reference point.
They have to. It won't feel like this for Aston Villa fans this morning, but they have to use this as an incredible motivation an incredible appreciation really for how far they've come under Emery. From them to go from when he took over not that long ago to where they are now, like life and death with one of the best teams. A lot of people think the best team in Europe actually this season, and narrowly go out because they took risks, because they swashbuckled their way through an amazing European night at Villa Park, with all the history that represents as well. It's an amazing step on what they hope to be a process that continues. They can, as long as they don't see this as a summit and it all falls apart from here, and there's a mutual kind of exhalation or a group exhalation, and they kind of limp through the rest of the season, which I don't think would happen because I don't think Emery would stand for it.
I don't think they're going to do a Leicester City necessarily.
It's another notch on the belt. It's another way that they've progressed. I thought it was really... so there's a few key inflection points, I think, across the whole two legs. You've got that save, from Donnarumma from Asensio, which would have been an incredible narrative. I really was desperate to see how he was going to celebrate if he'd scored. But if you go back through the piece, start of the game last night, Villa start really well. They know what their task is. They start with a good tempo, good pace. John McGinn's everywhere. And then PSG score. Takes the wind out of them. They have to reset. Then PSG score again, and they don't let that deter them. They come back and they bounce back. The heartbreaker for them, I think, is probably in retrospect the third goal that Mendes scores in the first leg.
Well, indeed, I think that's actually been forgotten about.
Heartbreaker. That's been the difference, really.
Well, I would say, look, because I mean, Vish, with a team like Villa, obviously they've got a canny operator in Unai Emery. We tend to think of him being an operator in the Europa League, but of course he's played in, or he's managed in the Champions League. But a lot of those Villa players have not had this kind of experience. Some of them have, but some of them haven't.
A lot of them have had big experiences, though. I think even if you look at someone like Ezra Konsa playing for England, I think there's I totally understand what you're saying, but I think there is a lot of big game, big moment experience within the squad, which essentially allows them to get in a situation where they put three past PSG and they have more than half an hour to chase a fourth goal. I think the thing that they'd
But my point was going to be, though, is that there's a minute and a half left in Paris. See it out in a 2-1 loss. They go 2 goals behind. Wayne Rooney kept making the point, didn't he? He was like, but you've given them two goals there. Yes, they started well. They started strongly. But that first goal, as Jim said, Torres and Martinez, there's a mix-up. Torres actually, in hindsight, you should just thump it out for a corner. But he leaves it for Martinez. Now, you can't say Martinez is
I wouldn't blame him for that, though. I'd blame Martinez for that, who clearly shouts for it.
He clearly,
there's a mix-up there. Now, again, you're talking about big game experience. Martinez has won the damn World Cup, for goodness sake. So, there's just a sprinkling of naivety that you could say has cost them, say, 2 or 3 goals in that tie. And I think that Rooney made the point that if you just make sure you don't give anything sloppy away, you're still there, and then you can push. You kind of go on those raids. And they went hell for leather straight away, but PSG are devastating on the counter.
Yeah, and Luke was right to mention the Mendes goal from the first leg, not least because probably for the last 10 minutes of the game, all that the commentators were saying, and I suppose all that we were thinking at home watching the end of that first leg, is don't concede another one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they go and do that. And I think in hindsight, and maybe even before this game yesterday, they would have looked back on that first leg and wondered if they could have been a little bit more attacking, or at least given a bit more going forward. That's certainly how I felt watching it. At the same time, I did the Reacts with Pete after that game, and I said basically, like, how do you live with that version of PSG?
Yeah, perhaps I'm forgetting that PSG are coming at them, so maybe it's a bit unfair.
I mean, their press is probably the best in Europe. We didn't necessarily see it in its full glory last night because the circumstances of the game didn't demand that they went hell for leather the whole time. But in that first leg in particular, they really, really pin Villa in.
Oh, they're a better side than Villa, there's no doubt about that. But the fact is, when the chips were down, Villa responded really, really well. And they get the goal just before half-time and then they carry on. And it was funny, when John McGinn picks the ball up, he had a moment before when he scored where he did break forward. I remember thinking, just have a crack.
Yeah.
I know you think, well, we talk about XG, and then managers say, well, actually don't, because the chances of you whipping one in from 25 yards are quite low.
I feel like those odds are different in the Champions League.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
And all that sort of stuff. And it's easy to sit there in your armchair at home and say this, that and the other. I understand that fully. But he then gets a moment where he does break forward and he scores, and a little bit fortuitous with a slight deflection and all, but it goes in, and you're just thinking maybe. And then suddenly Marcus Rashford, I say suddenly, he was great all game, jinks down the side and then and puts one in. But just before that, of course, he himself has a crack, and Donnarumma pulls out that incredible save. And it just shows you again, though, that PSG side are so well balanced across the pitch. They've got pace, they've got technique, they've got intelligence, everything you want. I mean, the only thing they lack is a bit of height, which is what Luis Enrique said, when Villa were putting some high balls in there. But you get past them all, then you've got to get past the end of level boss, which is Donnarumma. I mean,
can he just fuck off?
He's such a beast, isn't he? I mean, Alisson at Liverpool has that presence and the size of the guy and everything. He's like that. I mean, you're talking about two of the best keepers on the planet. Some would say one, some might say the other. I'm not really interested in that. But what we do know is that it is extremely difficult to get the ball past him. And so when Konsa finishes quite beautifully for 3-2, I mean, I'm off my seat. Suddenly, Aston Villa, if they weren't before that goal, they definitely became your team, unless you're a Birmingham City fan or something. Do you know what I mean? Suddenly the whole country really is behind them. And Tielemans has a chance with the header.
Which is another brilliant save.
Which again, he claws out. And that moment of the game where it goes crazy in Villa's favour, Villa, that's the time, if you can, to get the equaliser. And then, as you say, Asensio has a chance. And then Konsa with that, well, it wasn't a header, was it? He completely misjudged it and he knew. If they get the equaliser then, you've then got about 25 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. That's when you kind of go, right, take stock, settle back in, and then we'll go on another raid later. But the problem was they didn't get that goal. And I actually disagree with you, Jim, in terms of, you said PSG got a hold of it with about 5 minutes to go. I thought for the last 20 minutes, I didn't think there was too much going on.
There was a lot of, they did a lot of good time wasting in the 3 minutes of added time.
They did.
But then obviously what happens at the end is Maatsen has that volley, which is going in.
Which is a great effort. Yeah. He can't do any more, really.
Exactly. The way he's contorted his body there in midair and still like, his incredible core strength to be able to fashion that volley. Mm-hmm. And God.
But it's funny because I thought with PSG, they kind of still sort of played their game. I didn't think that they were like shithousing their way the last few minutes. You see Luis Enrique's kind of ideology and school of thought getting in there. They were still trying to catch him on the break and all that kind of stuff.
Do you know what? It's fascinating, isn't it? Because there's two examples already of what I'm about to say, and there'll possibly be a third one tonight, although Jim will hope not. It makes it really interesting to watch how the team who've got quite a considerable advantage, if you look at the stats, like if you watch just as general common garden watcher of football and you think, okay, they've got a 2-goal lead, that's not that much. if you look at the stats, it's fucking massive.
Well, then they go 5-1 up on aggregate.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is the team who go 2 goals ahead and they're tied, generally, this percentage of how often they win is pretty high. You got the way that PSG kind of approached this, where they clearly were just like, look, Villa are going to come at us. The atmosphere is going to be fierce. We just need to keep calm, ride it out, and exploit either a mistake or a counter-attack, which is obviously they are able to do. But even then, when they go 5-1 up, it becomes a situation where Aston Villa clearly are like, well, we're going out. So what's the point? It's high-risk football. And the thing about high-risk football is it occasionally rewards you, which it did. Look at what happened. I know we're going to come on to this, but look at what happened with Barcelona and Dortmund. In Dortmund last night, Barcelona got a considerable advantage. What it looked like to me was they didn't really know what to do. Because Dortmund's, what I'm saying is it crystallises and clarifies what your task is if you're a Villa or a Dortmund, or in this case, a Real Madrid tonight. You know what you've got to do because you've already come to terms with the fact that you're probably going to go home. So it makes it clear. And I find it fascinating, even at the top level of football, in these last stages of these big tournaments, teams don't have a clear idea what their job is because they get worried that if they sit back, it's A, not their natural game, particularly in PSG's case, and B, inviting an incredible amount of pressure on them. And it goes back to something that Graham Lasso said years and years ago, always stuck in my mind, when he was talking about being in a team that fights against relegation. It doesn't score many goals. He said, what's not talked about enough is just the colossal amount of pressure every single week, every single defensive player's under, because they know the team isn't going to score. And it's really hard to play like that, which is why teams don't do it. So the whole thing makes it totally fascinating as a tactical encounter. And what I would say is it won't feel like this to Villa fans today or to Aston Villa players, but that is how you go out of the Champions League.
Indeed.
If you're going to do it on your shield. Don't do it in a kind of sit back and see what happens kind of way, because I think that if they had gone, weirdly enough, if they had gone into the second leg last night just 1 goal behind, they might have been, look, we don't need to do much early on. We can just keep the ball. We can leverage the atmosphere and maybe try and nick a goal, then see where we are. They weren't able to do that. And that made for an amazing encounter for us to watch.
Well, the early 2 goals, the 2 early goals, or early-ish goals, that, as you say, the dynamic then is set. You've got to come and get it, and we're going to hit you on the break. But one thing, though, that was impressive with Villa was that high line they were playing. It was very high risk. And PSG couldn't then, after those 2 goals, they had a few moments where they nearly got in. And perhaps on another day, Doué scores his chance late or not.
Martinez made some big saves.
He did. He was, after that, the early goal.
I like the way there was a moment yesterday where the PSG would have been thinking, God, I wish we still had Mbappe. It's so selfish, so counterproductive to what we're doing at the moment, but God, it'd be good to have him, wouldn't it?
Yeah, indeed. But that's it, though. They had to do it. And Emery, when he walked off at the end, he booted something. I couldn't quite see, was it a bottle or whatever? He knew that they were so close. And again, this is going to be pointless for me to say, but we can talk about the future, absolutely, but Villa fans will be very, very down because it's an opportunity. You've got the tournament favourite on the ropes, could well play Arsenal in the next. Do you know what I mean? Like if you start extrapolating it out, you could go, we could have won this damn competition. Now again, there's a lot of if this happens and but that, because if they equalise, on aggregate on the night. It doesn't mean to say you're going to go on and win it.
What happens? They go to penalties, Donnarumma ruins their night as well.
I don't know. Donnarumma and Martinez are the same shootout. That would have been...
It's a shame we've missed out on that.
Have we ever seen a 0-0? 1-0, they nicked it with a... So I think Emery, the emotions were so high, obviously because of what happens, but also, it was an opportunity. But the reason why it was an opportunity is because what they showed in that second half. Because really, at 5-1 down against a superior side, there shouldn't have been an opportunity, but they played the way back into it. And that's actually what they've got to hang their hats on, as you were saying there, Luke. They've still got a semi-final of an FA Cup to come. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? They've got to battle back into this Champions League. But you're right. This is, for Villa now, it's like, this is not a one-off. We want to be a Champions League club. A top 4 or top 5 now is up for grabs. We know that. Will Forest be there next season? Maybe. They certainly hope so. But, Man United and Spurs are nowhere. Chelsea, it's a funny old situation. Newcastle are another side that are going to try and get in there and establish themselves as that. Villa now is a destination for big players to think, you know what, I'd fancy a bit of that.
But they've only got a month to do that, and they've got a very hard run in the league.
They do, but I mean, there's
Newcastle, Man City up next.
It would be, I think it's rather fanciful to say they wouldn't get any European football. But of course, Conference League is rather different to the Champions League. So the Champions League is where it's at. I think even if they got a Europa League spot, it wouldn't be a disaster. But right now,
I don't think it is that hard.
It's pretty hard.
The next 2 games are hard. Other than that, they're all winnable.
They've got Palace, Fulham. I mean, they've got 2 vouchers at the end because they finished with Manchester United and Spurs.
Look, we were debating on our YouTube channel is would Villa or we were thinking Villa or Man City, would they get the last one because we fancy Forest and Newcastle to do it.
I just think that they've
got to pick themselves up though, and that's going to be difficult.
But they're such a well-coached team, and you know, I know this sounds a bit brutal to ask this question in this way, but like if you're Aston Villa or you're an Aston Villa fan, what did you expect? What did you realistically expect in your first season in the Champions League? You know, going out in a life or death situation to one of the most fancy teams in the tournament in the quarterfinal stage? Probably would have taken that.
Yeah.
You know, because you've got to use it as a building block.
Absolutely.
No one is realistically suggesting that Aston Villa would have won the Champions League this season.
Mm-hmm.
Although, you know, conversely, if they got past PSG last night, you'd probably say, well,
they're in the mix.
You don't fear anyone because you're in the semi, right?
Yeah.
But this represents incredible progress, an amazing achievement on its own terms, and it has to be, as we've said, has to be a platform for what's next. What it's given is an incredible taste of the biscuit to Emery about what's possible at this club, because they're big enough to sustain anything, because they've shown that they've won the European Cup before anyway. The stadium's amazing, you know, they've got the resources. The players he's brought in January have been amazing as well. Like, if he can kind of find a way, I don't know what the detail around on this would be, but if they could find a way to, you know, perhaps permanently sign Asensio, permanently sign Rashford, they've shown that not only can they play really well tactically, but they're really well coached. But the fact that Emery he's one of these guys. I said this a week or so ago, and I hear it from Aston Villa fans of whom I know quite a few, time and time again, is that Emery's not just a great coach. He's like a proper figurehead that leads from the front. He shows them what's possible. He makes them, it's like a cheesy thing to say, but he makes them believe they can do it.
You're right. He does.
He's also
like,
relentless, isn't he?
Yeah, but he's not like this kind of certain breed of manager you get. Usually an English manager actually would be a bit like, well, you know, let's just calm down. We're all lucky to be here, you know. This is look where we were when I took over. All that kind of shit they say. He's not like that. He's like, no, we're pressing on here.
Definitely.
And if they get back in the Champions League next season, it will be the same again, won't it? They'll be in it to go as far as possible. And I think one of the really impressive things about this tie was, after the first leg, you're thinking, oh, Villa are well beaten there. It's like the run's come to an end. And ultimately, they have gone out. But they weren't well beaten, were they? They really, really challenged PSG and made them look like a quite flawed team at times, which is a really, really impressive thing. And you mentioned Marcus Rashford there. And, I mean, his assist for Konsa's goal, we haven't mentioned yet. And that was a thing of beauty. That's the sort of play that belongs at that level.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And I think, the Villa, they've got a real chance now to carry on this work, as you say, Luke. And what's been really impressive about them this season is how they are still in the mix for Champions League spots. They're in a semi-final of the FA Cup, and they've only just gone out here. We all worried for them, or were slightly concerned about the physical load they would have this season. And the January signings, much has been said about that, have really helped. Yeah. And again, that was Emery. You know, Emery specifically eyed up Marcus Rashford, didn't he? But we'll talk more about him in a bit. But you know, look at the energy that they had in that second half, and obviously they're going on the crowd, they're going on all that kind of stuff. It's incredible, really. The run in now is going to be a real test. I would
be
physical
saying,
and mental strength.
Speaking of Emery leading from the front and setting the tone for that whole club, if I was Emery, I'd be saying, give us that atmosphere every single game for the rest of the season. Every single home game we have. For the rest
you want
of the
that
season,
again? Well, we'll deliver it to you.
Can you give us that at Newcastle, against Newcastle at home, because we'll need it? Can you give us that at home to we probably won't need it against Spurs. Against Fulham. You know,
Get that one off.
The reason I don't think Fulham will win is because it's at Villa Park. I don't think Fulham will win at Villa Park. So I just think if they can generate an atmosphere again in the 3 home games they've got left, that's massive for them. It shows what's possible.
It does. All right, coming up after this, more on Aston Villa, and Dortmund's own magnificent comeback falls just short.
Chips.
Welcome back to the Football Ramble, everybody. John McGinn earned his chips.
I thought he was going to get sent off at one point.
He was
marauding around like a maniac for a while.
Yeah, maybe that's why I took him off.
Sticking his arse in everywhere. The most impressive arse since Kenny Dalglish.
That arse has bruised some legs, hasn't it?
For sure.
It certainly has. Staying with Villa, did you see they accidentally played the Europa League anthem at Villa Park as the teams lined up?
Yes.
Was that to get Emery going?
Yeah.
and then they went, but now we'll play the Champions League one, so that should put a bit of fear in the PSG players? I've no idea what they were
I'd love the idea of like this Pavlovian conditioning that they play the Europa League anthem when like Emery just starts salivating because that's his tournament, you know.
It is his tournament, Vish. You can't deny.
Don't deny it, Vish.
I'm not trying to.
All right then.
Just looked like he was going to deny it, didn't he?
Yeah, he just went very quiet there.
Very deny face on there.
We have to talk about Marcus Rashford. Rashford was brilliant last night. It was so good. And I loved what Daniel Sturridge said. He just went, I'm proud of Marcus Rashford. And I thought to myself, yeah, I am in no sort of position to be proud of him, if you see what I mean. Like, it seems sort of rather odd for someone like me to say. I get why Sturridge might, but I really felt that.
As people who live in the UK, because of all the press he gets, we are all invested one way or another in how happy Marcus Rashford is or isn't. So it's nice to see him put in such a good performance and make such a specific impact on such a huge stage.
Also for me, the Marcus Union is a thing.
Of course.
So, he's done us proud there. He's done the whole Union proud. But look, there was some interesting chat afterwards. Old Wazza was saying, he went, I'd love to see him back at Man United. And I think I was one of many people that just thought, no. That's
he also
not,
I love Wayne Rooney, but his punditry every now and again, it makes you think, you don't read or listen to anything else between your own stints, do you? You know the situation back there, yeah?
Yeah, exactly,
Wayne Rooney's one of the few pundits who, if he just appears on the screen, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I don't need him to say anything.
Yeah.
I just love the aura and the charisma of the man.
Yeah.
I like him there just glowing.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Just the Rooney pulling other pundits in.
Like Noel Gallagher, yeah.
No, fuck that. Like with Rooney, I think what people don't understand about Rooney is his gravitational pull. Pulls in all these other good pundits.
Sure.
Yeah, he's like what people say. You watch the punditry on the LTV, and you don't notice much. You watch Rooney, you notice all of it.
You do. Well, do you know, I really enjoyed Ashley Young being there as well. And as Gabby Logan said, reminded us that and I was like, oh yeah, he's still a player, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's still a player. But,
kind of.
Outrageous.
It's not outrageous.
It is outrageous.
He's registered.
Yeah.
He is registered.
Evergreen at Everton.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point that they were talking about Marcus Rashford and so on, and if I was Marcus Rashford, I'd be saying to my agent, do all you can to keep me at this club.
But there is that's essentially getting us straight to the crux of the issue there. A lot of it dependent if he wants to be at Aston Villa, and wanting to be at Aston Villa will rely on wages.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose lowering his demands, because he's on a lot of money at Manchester United.
Yeah,
I think that the only realistic way he's at Aston Villa next season, to my mind, is on another loan deal. And I don't know that Manchester United would want that, because they'd need to.
Well, it would be a shame.
The
The reason why, you're right to bring all that. Of course, I suppose the sort of starry-eyed football fan in me would think that with Rashford, we know what's happened at Manchester United, and much like a number of them who have left, whether it be on loan or permanent, they're having a lovely old time. But with Rashford, we thought there was maybe something a bit more going on. But at Villa, Emery said, "I want him." And he's got him in there. And Emery, when he tends to want the player, he tends to know how to use him and gets the best out of him. He's playing really, really well. He's playing for a manager who wants him there, a manager who's starting him in one of Villa's biggest ever games, or certainly in their recent history. Watkins, who's done a fine job for them up front, is on the bench. And Rashford, he's put on point. Yeah. That's what Emery is saying to him. That's how much he believes in him.
In a position where we end up, we've had this discussion for ages of, can he play as a number 9?
Well, indeed, but
Rashford, you do it for two big games.
Rashford then puts in that performance against PSG and wows everybody. Again, like, I understand your point about the wages, and yes, it could well come down to that. And football is not just about, you don't just play fantasy football in real life. And obviously, if he gets a plum deal from a huge team abroad, blah, 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 blah.
Well,
but for me, where I'm sitting, I'd love to see him at Villa next season.
Aston Villa have an option to buy him.
Yeah.
They have an option to buy him for 40 million.
Yes.
So that's easily doable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a doable bit.
It comes down to what Rashford actually wants, right? Mm-hmm. And we weren't sure. It's not that long ago when he was at United being linked away. We didn't know where he was going to go. We were talking about. I remember the conversation we had in here, which was, does he want to still be a footballer for Man United, and does he still want to be a footballer? Right, because of all this other stuff that's been going on. We've talked about the controvery that he's attracted, rightly or wrongly. And I don't know the detail on that personally, but you know what we're talking about.
But it certainly answered the second question.
Yeah, and he if he's making
answered both questions.
If he's making the best decision for his career, there's no starker evidence of how bad it is at Man United than watching Marcus Rashford play last night.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels to me like, and maybe I'm being naive, I don't know, but say like, I'm making the numbers up, but say he's on 300 grand a week at United. I don't know what he's on, but if he's on that, right? Well, would you take 300 grand a week to go back to Man United, which is an absolute shit show, or would you take a pay cut to go to Aston Villa and just build bonuses into your contract?
Where the manager clearly wants you there.
Where you can play. Like I would say that he should be snapping a hand off. Interestingly enough, Emery was saying in a press conference fairly recently, there's no decision been made, because I think when he started to bubble up and started to play and started to contribute, he was asked questions in press conferences and Emery was like, there's no decision been made. But it looked to me like he was saying that as a negotiation thing. If you keep saying, we desperately want him, like a Harry Redknapp, you end up paying loads more money than you need to pay, or giving him loads more wages than you need. That option's there for a reason. I think they'll trigger it, and I think they'll get him. I honestly think he'll be there next season.
And I think he'll want to be, based on how things are going. Why would you not?
Well, that's the thing. When you said, talk to your agent and do it, it is entirely down to Rashford. It's a personal thing about, the happiness and taking a wage cut for the happiness. I think he'd be amenable to it. I just think the situation as it is, it's a bit more complex. Because I remember, when he initially signed on loan, obviously there were a lot of Aston Villa fans happy. I was actually pretty happy that he was still in the league and that, we'd get to see him, because I know what he's like when he's on this kind of form. But a lot, there was certainly a bit of worry from Villa fans as well. And I think that's the most heartening thing in terms of how he's been able to change that. Even little things like people were bitching and moaning about how he looked in his presentation photo, that he looked at, that he hadn't had a shave and stuff like that. But that was, that's all, a little bit of a sinister extrapolation from the way he's perceived off the field and, his extracurricular activities and that kind of stuff.
JD Vance thought he should have worn a suit, but there we go.
Yes, yeah, even that fucking rubber-faced cunt.
JD Vance dropped a trophy last week.
Yeah, he did.
The college football trophy.
He dropped a few bollocks and all.
He looked like he was genuinely struggling to pick it up.
Anyway, back to Rashford.
But I would say, though, I totally understand your point, Vish, and I completely can read between the lines as well. But look, maybe it's unfair to judge him on it because of how bad it got at United in terms of the relationship between the club and the player and what's happening at the top level, the top of the club and stuff, But Rashford wasn't helping himself with some stuff as well.
No,
yeah, I'm not saying that he.
It was a complete loss of focus, wasn't it?
He said himself he needed a move. He's not going to go back to Manchester United. I don't think. I just can't see that happening.
But because the situation with United next season is likely to be the very worst of both worlds, by which I mean they're unlikely to be in Europe next season. They can still be, but they're unlikely to be. And you're still going to get all the pressure that comes on playing for Man United, all the scrutiny, all the shit. Particularly if you're Rashford, there's a young kid come through there.
God, imagine Rashford goes back in there and his form isn't great straight away.
Exactly.
It will be disaster.
He's at a club where they've just had an incredible Champions League night. He's still got the semi-final in the FA Cup, and they're trying to get back into the Champions League in the league. Why would you go back to a side that's not doing any of that?
Even from a tactical perspective as well.
League.
From a tactical perspective as well, if you're looking at the way Manchester United are playing, and if you're looking at the way that, say, someone like Garnacho and Højlund / Xerxes, if you're looking at where they're actually playing, whether they're trusted, not particularly, and also where you would see yourself fitting in, it is actually quite hard to see an ideal position for Rashford. Yeah. And while he's looking at what's going on back home, essentially, quote unquote, he is in a system that fits him like a glove.
But he wants
across
a fullback.
Two positions as
exactly,
well.
Yeah, he wants if he's playing out wide, which he probably predominantly will at Villa and has. He wants a proper fullback behind him. He doesn't want a sort of a wing back who's maybe going to provide a lot of the width, and so that's what he wants.
It's not even a fullback; it's a midfield. It's a functioning team. Yeah, well, indeed, that should be. Not should be, but that has to be one of the considerations. Yeah. When you'd think it has to be consideration when anyone makes a move anywhere. But particularly at this time in Rashford's career, given what's happened over the last 3 months, it's got to be, it's got to be quite close to the surface in terms of the decision he makes at the end of the season.
You know what I thought last night watching him at Villa Park? I thought, we've got our Rashford back. Get him in the England squad again.
He was in there. He played recently.
Hence I said again, Luke, listen.
Played recently.
Come on.
Marcus Rashford's that kind of type of player when it comes to England who, we've seen it over the years, time and time again, who has to do something actually quite appalling to not be in the England squad.
Yeah. He wasn't at the Euros.
No, I know, but I'm saying, because he was appalling.
There you are. Your theory is proved
I don't think it's not a coincidence that Tuchel straight away was like, yep. Some people's face just fit at England. That's just how it goes.
But he was at Villa at the time, so maybe that made all.
I don't know why we're talking about England.
Because it's the big picture, and I'm all about the big picture, baby.
So before Dortmund, Barcelona, on the running order, the framing of this Marcus Rashford conversation was: did he get himself on the Nations League plane with this performance?
And what's my comment in the doc?
Stop this for goodness sake.
I wasn't a part of any of this. Take out with the producers.
But it had your fingerprints all over it.
Take out with the producers.
The puppet master over there.
You'll never get me. Let's talk about Borussia Dortmund 3, Barcelona 1. Barcelona 1, 5-3 on AG. They had them going a little bit. Dortmund did end Barcelona's 24-match unbeaten run, but obviously that's not the story here. And they get an early goal through Girassi, who of course scored a hat-trick. And then there was a few... that was... If you're needing to score 4 to get to extra time, and then you need 5 to win...
And you kick one in your own net.
Yes, exactly. And 5 to win the game and not concede any. It's a huge ask. And you really need to be at least 2-0 up at half-time, I would say. And they had a few moments and blah, 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 blah. But 1-0 at half-time, it just wasn't enough. But it was a good effort, though.
It was spirited. But again, it's interesting when you get to this stage of the Champions League, even games that look like they're done and dusted, there's a fight in there. And ultimately, Dortmund and Villa have gone out. But as the home teams, starting with the deficit, they've both put in a really, really massive effort there. And I think the quality just comes to the fore, doesn't it? Time and time again.
I know this is I'm slightly cruel thing to say to you, Jim, but I'd be nervous as fuck about tonight.
Of course. Yeah, it's just
wild.
We see it over and over and over again. It's routine. It's just the quality of the players on show just comes out in this pressure environment.
Did you like Girassi? It's early on. We'll speak about Arsenal in a bit, chaps. Let's but Girassi with that Panenka. It was like
Jurassic Panenka don't work.
I've been pronouncing him Girassi. Is it Girassi?
We can say whichever you want, mate.
Because I want it to be Girassi so we can do some kind of Jurassic Park puns.
Oh, good, yeah. Let's stick with that.
Well, anyway, the Panenka...
He does move in herds.
There you go. Yeah,
I thought the way he hit the Panenka was a clever curl.
Nice.
Didn't actually curl, did it?
It did a little bit.
Yeah. It was a Panenka that was
I cannot believe you're both splitting hairs over it. I cannot believe that.
Yeah.
It was quite a ballsy thing to do. It certainly impressed Robbie Savage.
Yeah.
In commentary.
Who was very, very clearly quite annoyed at not being asked to do co-coms for the Villa game. I don't know who the commentator was in the Dortmund Barcelona game, but he was really shouty as well. He's
often he's a regular on TNT Sports. Yeah.
Do you think he was shouting to try and get overheard on the other broadcast?
Yeah, maybe, or just shouting right in Savage's ear so he'd fuck off. But I think Girassi/Girassi is an interesting case because he's had an amazing couple of years of goal scoring, and he's 29 now, and he's another example of this Indian summer type striker that we see in the modern game, where he's not really shown any consistent goal scoring prowess until about 2 years ago.
It's because they're coming back into fashion, and I think maybe tactics are evolving to bring in a proper number 9.
But he absolutely stole the show from another Indian summer stroke on the other side of the pitch in Robert Lewandowski.
Although, is it an Indian summer if it's just always hot?
Yeah,
global warming. It's just India, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I do think, not to rehash a point I made at the start of this, but I do think the clarity of purpose that a team who are facing a deficit get from these types of games is kind of amazing joy to behold from a neutral kind of viewer's point of view. It's very, very reminiscent of exactly what happened at Villa Park, because you've got like a stadium again, which is very famous for having an incredible atmosphere. The fans really play their part. Dortmund know what the assignment is. They go out there and they try and do it. The biggest travesty, or not travesty, that's the wrong word. The biggest kind of tragedy of the whole affair last night was quite simply Barcelona's shorts.
Oh, yeah. What was this knockoff Genoa that they were trying to do? Yeah.
That was strange.
Last minute, they've thought we've been told by the UEFA officials we can't wear our shorts. We're going to have to wear these specials.
So they were white shorts, weren't they?
Yeah.
Get in their heads, do something weird.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one might argue it worked. Your man Pascal Gross was there. He scored, but it was ruled out correctly for offside.
Just one of the all-time great value Premier League signings. One of the all-time just enjoyable midfielders to watch. Still 33 in that position he plays. Bit more energy in the tank, clearly. Yeah. I'm sad that he's left the Premier League. I think he's a fucking brilliant player. He does so much so well, and it's great to see him. I know they've gone out, but it's great to see him getting his flowers and on the big stage of club football, because I think he deserves it.
It's a shame he was offside there, because I think he grew up a Dortmund fan, didn't he? And this is a big move for him.
Oh yeah, it's massive.
To see him flourishing there is great. But as you say, it's a shame that they couldn't quite turn this around. Julian Brandt had the ball in the net as well.
Another another
The
offside
two most
one.
German men you're ever going to see in your life, Julian Brandt and Pascal Gross.
Yeah, you've forgotten Oliver Kahn, obviously. But Jim, we've been critical of the Barcelona team's garms there. What about some of the fans, though? Because there were a few, and I do stress a very few Barcelona fans seen in Arsenal Declan Rice shirts walking through Dortmund singing his name.
It's expensive banter, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's expensive, convoluted banter.
Will they be
in a different country from the target of it?
Arsenal were going to be on the end of a proper Spanish Inquisition in the next few months. If Real Madrid turn it around tonight and knock them out, and then Barcelona come in for Declan Rice, that they can't afford, they can't pay him.
Yeah, but that doesn't never stop them.
Use
before.
another lever.
Yeah, there's a lot of levers, but crucially not a levy. But Jim, will that come back to bite them when Rice scores the winner in the final against them?
Yeah.
I hope so, Mark.
Yeah. The
I
stage
can
is
only
set.
very much hope so.
And it's the hope that butchers you, isn't it?
Marcus, I can't see that
Hope
not
that
happening.
absolutely fillets you. The hope that blood eagles you.
Yeah.
Look, can we fast forward to Real Madrid Arsenal so we can really twist the knife?
Yeah.
No, I've got an important update.
Okay.
From the world of football, we move on from the Champions League into bigger things. FIFA are offering fans the guaranteed chance to buy tickets to the 2026 World Cup final. This is big.
Yes.
All you've got to do, everybody, I know people think, bloody hell.
I'll do anything for World Cup tickets.
Right. But are you going to take a leaf out of Meatloaf's book? Because will you do this? You've got to buy 20 tickets for this summer's Club World Cup.
hell.
Yeah. You can get access to any other 2026 World Cup match if you want. Not the final, but you still have to buy a standard ticket pack for 2 or 3 Club World Cup matches.
Bish, do you know what a timeshare is?
Yeah,
Are you aware of
100%. Yeah.
a Bernie Madoff type Ponzi scheme?
Yeah.
A Sir Alan Stanford. Would you be interested in giving all the money you have to be given what's almost certainly going to be a dead rubber group game in the 2026 World Cup? Because the FIFA have already said, I think they've already said you can't choose which one it is.
Yeah,
if you drew out, so like you buy 20 tickets, you get
20
a chance,
of the bastards.
If you literally drew that flowchart out on a piece of paper, it is a fucking pyramid.
Yes. But 20 tickets, though. It's not just you buy tickets, you're in the hat, you've got preference, all that
There's
kind
only
of stuff.
22 separate match days in the whole tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, Luke, so 19 friends? Have I got 19 friends?
20 different. It's, by the way, it's being played across 3 countries. So,
Yeah.
Get Robbie Earl on it.
yeah.
Lovely throwback there,
Yeah.
Jim.
As Luke alluded to then, so FIFA choose in its sole discretion which World Cup match you then attend in the tournament. And like FIFA choosing which game you go to regardless of your nationality is so illustrative of how soulless their approach is to their own tournament. Their own reason for being.
The club,
they don't get it, do they?
The Club World Cup is actually only been played in the United States, isn't it? But that is technically the size of 3 different countries.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of travel involved.
Yeah, and also as Jim was saying there, like they're not even considering like the nationality of the ticket holders, and from what I understand, it's fine to be any nationality and head into America.
Yeah.
Well,
Just so long as you don't want to get out.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Basically, what I'm saying is you're better off getting it from a resale website and paying through the nose to watch a World Cup match of your choice when it comes around. That's how daft this whole bleeding
It's
thing
basically impossible because if you went to say a game on the second match day, you'd have to choose between doing multiples of these: Cincinnati, LA, New York, Seattle.
Well, they're about an hour drive from each other.
Basically, yeah.
It really.
Imagine being in New York. Is anyone? You're not going to the Seattle game later on, are you? I am. Yeah, just jump in.
Yeah,
Let's go across the fucking country.
There's a direct train there, just leaving in 10 minutes.
Do you know how much Yahoo Sports are reporting that the super ticket pack costs $2,600?
It really feels like ChatGPT came up with this.
That's before travel. It's before travel.
And then we'll decide which World Cup game you go to.
Panama versus Guinea. Both teams are already out in the group stage.
It's so shit. It's such a big pile of wank, this.
One of the worst games as well to go to at World Cup is the last group game featuring England.
Yeah.
It's so often...
the second group game on the Southgate was the worst one. But I take your point, words fail me.
But how do they keep getting worse?
You guys can't tell me.
Worse.
You guys can't tell me that you wouldn't pay $2,600 to watch Inter Miami versus Al Ahly.
There you go.
At the Hard Rock Stadium in South Florida.
Take a month off.
Your life with a very early start the next day.
I know. Yeah. That's it. So
You'd be jet lagged and all sorts.
Gianni Infantino is clearly at the head of an operation where he has an idea.
Right,
no one says anything. and he just carries on with it.
Yeah.
It's remarkable how he's not even considered that people have jobs. It's just wild.
I think if you worked at FIFA, you might look around and think no one has jobs.
No. But you can see wherever you want to go because it's obviously a very transparent office.
That's right.
It's made of glass, isn't it, to be
Yeah.
transparent?
Everywhere looks nearby.
Yeah, it does.
We have to move on
Yeah.
with our lives. Coming up after this, perhaps the biggest game in Arsenal's recent history is tonight. Indeed, Arsenal play Real Madrid.
Are you scared, Jim?
Yeah, of course, Real Madrid will be at the Club World Cup, so if you do fancy watching them, get saving. Cash in some of your stocks and shares.
That's presumably why you're not going tonight. You're just saving up for the Club World Cup.
Yeah.
Have you got a super ticket pack for tonight's game?
You get 20 different seats, but only one of you can go.
Not all of them face the pitch.
No club has come back from more first leg losses over 2 goals than Real Madrid.
So the messaging from Arsenal is that they're going out there to win the game, and I hope
That's the spirit.
I hope they mean that, and I hope that they can impose themselves, because I think Madrid are going to fly out the blocks. And it's one thing saying we're going to go out there and try and win it, isn't it? But if you're under the cosh after like 2 minutes, it's often games go very, very differently, and it does seem ridiculous, doesn't it, to think that there's some jeopardy after a result like that. But that is the nature of the Champions League. We've seen it last night twice, nearly go that way, and it's the nature of Real Madrid in this competition. So another thing I think about in terms of this game is that those 2 free kicks from Declan Rice were obviously brilliant, but they were statistical lightning strikes almost, So if this was 1-0, the feel would be very, very different. I think people would look at Real Madrid as the favourites if the score had gone in at 1-0, and the way the game will play out could well be balanced as if this was a 1-0 lead. And also, I think possibly the biggest factor tonight that's going to be different is that Real Madrid are going to likely have a very different midfield. Now, Aurelien Tchouameni is back from suspension, and I would imagine that Valverde will move back into midfield as well. So that's completely different, essentially, apart from Jude Bellingham in that middle. So that's a different set of circumstances for Arsenal's midfield to have to deal with. And it is going to be a really tense night from behind my sofa.
Yes, have they re-signed Tony Kroos just for this game?
But one thing, the positive you would take into the game, into the Bernabeu from the Arsenal point of view, is that it's not necessarily that it sounds mental, but it's not necessarily they won 3-0, and it's not that Declan Rice did what he did. And I take Jim's points about the statistical anomalies of what Declan Rice did. It's to me, as a neutral, it's the way they approach the game.
Yes.
It's the lack of fear factor they showed from a team with an undeniably massive reputation in this competition, with undeniably huge players, and with the ability time and time again to get it done in the Champions League. They were able to disregard all that. I think being able to disregard that again at the Bernabeu is a tougher ask, a tougher assignment, and it's now clear that this game is the biggest game of their season by some distance. But at the same time, they're 3-0 up.
Yeah.
But the reality is...
You take that as a first leg advantage.
The reality is...
I'm quite pleased with that, I have to say.
To put it in, say, betting terms, Real Madrid are currently 6-1 to go through. That's massive. That's massive odds. It's basically saying, every 6 games you play, they only go through once. You take that all day long.
Yeah, totally.
But we, of course, know that football isn't always about that. But the fact remains, Arsenal have got a 3-goal lead.
Exactly.
That's huge. But again, to flip it back again, to make this whole rhetorical gymnastics even more tedious, at the start of the show, we talked about what's their assignment. Real Madrid are crystal clear what they've got to do.
Yeah.
And what's really terrifying, if I transport myself into the body of an Arsenal fan, is like Real Madrid, they know what they've got to do, and they actually believe they can do it.
Well, Jude Bellingham said that tonight's attempt to overturn a 3-goal deficit is, and I quote, an opportunity for us to do something for the first time. So that's really important to us.
Exactly.
He also said a lot of other stuff where he was just like, the Bernabeu is made for this kind of
exactly.
thing.
And let me ask you a question, right? Be totally honest, right? Do you honestly think 100% that Aston Villa thought they could get through last night? Not 100%. Do you think Dortmund thought they could?
Yeah.
No. Do you think Real Madrid think they can?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah,
House always wins.
well, indeed. They're the holders.
Fucking house.
And we know this, but,
Arsenal tries some card counting. Can you card count tonight?
If you really want to do the casino analogy, what you then find yourself doing is saying that what Arsenal should in fact do is take the 3-0 win, cash their chips and never come back.
Yeah.
But you can't do that, yeah? You've got to pay the second leg.
Mikel Arteta should have written an open letter to UEFA saying, can we bring the away goals rule back for this one?
Yeah.
But look, it's an enormous opportunity now for Arsenal to go through, obviously. But also, Vish, fans will have done this. You just glance at that semi-final against PSG and you saw what Villa did. They are beatable. So, I don't want to get ahead of themselves. I don't think too many Arsenal fans are maybe looking past the Bernabeu, but as a neutral, from the vantage point I am, one can do that. If Arsenal can get through this, which, as Luke says, the odds suggest that they can because they're 3 bloody goals up, this competition is there. It's incredibly difficult.
But I mean, I've thought that before they were 3-0 up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
big boy.
Because no, the point I'm making here is that like
You got a girlfriend goes to another school, have you? we wouldn't know it, Marcus.
But it's not ridiculous to think that Arsenal, one of the most consistent teams in one of the toughest leagues in Europe, would have designs on maybe winning the Champions League.
No, but I'm saying it's more realistic now when you can think about it.
Yeah,
because
sure.
when you talk about consistency, well, they've consistently gone out of a certain point in the Champions League as well. So, that
I was about to say that, not everyone wins the Champions League regularly, apart from the team Arsenal plays.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But the thing I am a bit more confident of, and I obviously have the benefit of distance and lack of attachment to Arsenal, is the fact that they've routinely kept things tight this season. They've been the most defensively sound team away from home in the Premier League. And I appreciate, different occasion, different competition, blah, 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 different opposition. But there is a sense, and we saw it last week in the first leg, of not just being able to disregard Real Madrid's history, but also being very well aware of their strengths and playing to a T. And I think one of the most important people tonight, as he was actually last week, is Partey. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because he's so calm. He's been in those situations so many times before. He has this way about him where he's quite silky, but you don't really see it because he's very quick with the ball. He gets it and gives it. He knows where to stand.
Relieving pressure. Yeah, all that.
I think. Sorry, go on. And I think the other side to it is he gives so much comfort to Odegaard and Rice. Rice bombs forward a bit more because he knows he can trust Partey. Mm-hmm. Kiwior is able to have a more solid game, despite the fact that we were talking about how he often starts with Ricks because Partey's in front of him. He has a very calming influence, which is going to be huge tonight.
Yeah, he has been a little bit inconsistent in this calendar year, but I think the occasion of a game like this should hopefully be enough for him to have one of his better performances.
Being a former Atleti man as well.
There's that, I suppose. And actually, one of the issues Arsenal have had in Europe in recent times, and it was kind of the same in the group stage as well, was their away performances haven't always been great. They've picked that up. Obviously, the PSV game was
they can be bullied on the road in Europe.
I think a little bit, and perhaps play within themselves a little bit. Yeah. So they have to break that. They have to not be like that, and then if they just have to turn up essentially and not be overawed by the occasion.
Well, that's it. And I mean, in the last game, as I say, their average positions were pretty much everybody, other than the 2 centre-halves and the goalkeeper, were in Real Madrid's halves, and the 2 centre-halves were on the halfway line, basically. They were so attacking. And it's about how that defensive line for me. How deep do they want to sit? Are they going to be under the cosh? Absolutely. How does that line? Watch the defensive line tonight, because if they just really sit on the edge of the box, they're inviting pressure. Yeah. I think that's a fascinating
But I think if they go too far up, it could be seen as suicidal.
Because you're already 3-0 up. So are we thinking mid-block, as the kids say nowadays?
I think it's an incredible story if Arsenal get through to the semi-final, knocking out Real Madrid and have a chance to win their first Champions League / European Cup. But from a neutral's point of view, I absolutely want a Real Madrid goal in the first 5 minutes.
100%.
You have to want it. You have to want it. You have to want to go early for Real Madrid to go to just basically all, because what they should do when they score their first goal in the first 5 minutes is go around to all the Arsenal players and literally physically check in their shorts to see what colour they are.
Just go around to each of them going, ooh.
Yeah. I think there's an interesting psychology at play as well, isn't there? Which is that Real Madrid will want extra time and Arsenal won't. So an early goal like that starts playing on your mind, the permutations very, very quickly. I think Arsenal probably need to score. Got to kill some momentum for Madrid.
Will it kill it? I don't know.
It's an exciting game anyway.
Very exciting game. And
There's the other thing. Sorry, very quickly. The other thing to remember is a lot of those Real Madrid players, and it's not just Bellingham and Mbappe. A lot of them know that they can be heroes tonight as individuals, and it'd be interesting to see how that A, drives it, or B, derails it a little bit.
Indeed.
Or what you're thinking is Danny Ceballos will be like, yeah, everyone will think I'm a hero because I played for Arsenal.
Yeah, I know the club.
And everyone's going to
shut up.
Yeah, everyone's reaction is actually going to be, oh, there's Danny Ceballos.
Yeah,
well, there he is. Yeah. In the other side of the draw, Inter host Bayern, of course. Can Harry Kane and Eric Dyer turn it round in Milan?
They always need one of us to pull them out of trouble.
the heads all think Inter are the team, don't they?
I think well, Inter I think could win this.
Inter look like they're never going to concede a goal again.
No, I know what you mean.
Certainly not at home.
I could see Inter beating PSG in the final 1-0 or something. But anyway, this is all a bit silly.
What's delicious about it is they're like, really, wherever you look, there are reminders for Man United fans that shit is just so bad. Like Henrik Mkhitaryan's going to play for Inter tonight. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. He's 36 and he's going to play. You can't enjoy anything as a Man United fan.
Yeah, well, you can enjoy, tomorrow night, can't you? Against Leon. Depends how it goes.
No, again, no.